I was wondering, let's say you have people saying they want to buy shares and they add new shares. And I don't know, I'm asking you guys here, do they add the shares and then they do go out and get the metal, but they're working that order? Because it's hard for me to see how this metal is already in there now. 35, 20.
It's not.
This is
Yeah, no
this
way.
is over 100 million ounces in 3 days while there's panic buying. Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. Hope you're all having a wonderful week out there. Certainly some really exciting times, and I think in due time we'll look back on this last week and what's happening now, and I think we'll see it as a historic point. With that said, wanted to share a quick video that obviously there's been a lot of additions to the SLV Silver Trust, a lot of new people to silver, and hearing about the short position, seeing what happens when a short position is overwhelmed. And I've gotten the question a lot, is SLV safe? And I will phrase it like this: I've not been inside their vault. I pray and hope that everything they represent in there is held accurately. Of all the silver related investments that I own, I do not own SLV. I do not plan on owning SLV, partly because to me, there was always just an inherent risk. And also, I mean, the custodian is JP Morgan, who was just fined $1 billion for manipulating gold and silver. I've made several other videos of what they did over the last 3 days and why silver came down 10% on Tuesday, despite panic buying in the physical markets. There's a reason that the people who have invested and understand silver the best are saying buy physical, not just saying it, but paying $6, $7, $8 more per ounce to own physical than to own SLV, where inherently you're trusting on JP Morgan's word for what is in there. I hope that it's in there as advertised, but certainly there have been warning signs emerging to me. Yet, because I understand people are watching, and I have no interest in slandering anybody. And fortunately, in last night's call, we had a roundtable where there were 3 other guests. One who was a former professional auditor for one of the big 5 accounting firms. 2 others one worked on a trading floor for a bank. Another that was in the banking department, have seen every trick in the book. They commented on what's been going on, but more specifically, what they think about SLV. These are the opinions of people that I would consider expert witnesses that I would call to a courtroom. And again, the only one who really knows what's in there, the people involved with the trust. If there's a representative from JP Morgan or SLV that would like to come discuss this on the show, I would encourage that. I think investors would love to hear from you. And if people want to share this, pass that along. I would love to be proven wrong, but just as an investigator, I'm seeing signs for concern that others are sharing. And of all the guests that I know and that I speak to outside of the show, I have yet to find someone who thinks that it's physically possible that 110 million ounces could have been added on no notice into those trusts. So anyway, we'll stop there. You can hear this part. I don't claim to know the exact answer. I'm just saying I see signs that concern me greatly. And here you go. Rob, before we wrap up, I'll let you take this one first. We don't have today's number yet, but here are the alleged inflows to the silver and ETF, silver and the other trusts. I fell out of my couch when I saw 34 million ounces on Friday, which matches what was available to the trust last year. So you ate the whole supply in the first day of silver squeeze. Monday, you got about 20. And then, Rob, you came over when we saw the 61 on Tuesday. I've talked to several of the guests that you guys see on the show. I've yet to find someone who sees how it is possible that the metal's going in here. I had a thought today that is a guess, but I'm wondering, because there wasn't any advance warning here. It wasn't like you could have planned, and some guy did the math. It'd be like 51,000 ounce bars per minute. You're registering this. Andrew McGuire's talked before, some of these amounts that go in, like when you actually look, can 10 or 20 people do this, it's hard to see. And I was wondering, let's say you have people saying they want to buy shares and they add new shares. And I don't know, I'm asking you guys here, do they add the shares and then they do go out and get the metal, but they're working that order? Because it's hard for me to see how this metal is already in there now. 35, 20.
It's not.
This is,
Yeah, no
this
way.
is over 100 million ounces in 3 days while there's panic buying. So any thoughts on that, Rob? Why don't you take that one first?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, you know, if you're going to kind of use common sense and be reasonable, if somebody's buying that many shares, obviously you can't get physical in. I mean, there's transportation, time, you got to source it in the market. You probably have, I mean, if you're smart about it, you have some open lines with some manufacturers or other partners like in the futures market where you could get a rapid amount of metal, where that's sort of a deal where if they have stocks, you know, and that's not unlike retail, like what Andy has said before. You know, he can go to distributors and he can get it because they're going to have a pile of it and he can get it fairly quickly. So I would assume that SLV has the same thing, right? So yeah, not same day, but within a reasonable amount of time. And I'm sure there's even a, you know, some sort of contract or something around when they get it. Here's the problem. What we heard Andy say and what you see in the retail market is there's no liquidity right now at these prices because, as Andy said, nobody's selling at this price. What I said earlier about the futures market is at this price, nobody's selling. People have to go to London. And what they're getting is, you know, whatever London's able to do. But the thing about London is it's privately negotiated. And I would bet my house on the fact that any silver you're getting out of London is not at spot price. That's a privately negotiated contract. I bet it's above spot for some premium. Nobody at these prices, there's no liquidity in the market. We've talked about this entire time. So my question is, at the prices people are buying those shares, are they going to be able to source physical? I don't think so. I think they're going to have to run a deficit. If they, to actually get that 100 million ounces of physical, they're going to have to pay $30 an ounce or something like that. And they're going to lose money. I mean, how do you, where you see this separation in price between physical and the futures market, how do you, you know, what reserve does SLV have to pay that premium? Because to get that much that quick, they're going to have to pay a premium.
And a question I have for anyone who wants to field this, if that is indeed the case, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out explanations. I know and I think there could be a lot of metal leasing going on in here too, but we'll leave that aside. If they're still currently working this order, wouldn't that imply that these to fill these 110 million ounces, now they're competing with Andy and all the other bullion dealers for the same pile of metal that's already tight? Dave?
Yes, there's only about 900 million ounces produced last year. That's 1/9 of all last year's production. So they have to go get 1/9 of all last year's production in a market in which people aren't selling at this price.
Dave?
You're making an assumption that the custodian or the trustee of SLV is making a bona fide effort to try and put the right, you know, the correct amount of physical into JP Morgan's vault. Well, if you read through the prospectus of SLV or GLD really closely, they don't really have to make a bona fide effort. In fact, I don't know if it's a general, I can't remember if it's a general ledger entry or if it's in the footnotes, but you know, they can just record a gold, like with GLD or SLV, gold or silver deposit, and that can be a receivable account. So, you know, I went through the GLD prospectus with a fine-tooth comb in 2009, and James Turk did the same thing when the S1 was filed in 2004. And there's really no way to know for sure whether or not the GLD and the SLV vault actually have, you know, titled interest to the silver bars that are in the HSBC in the case of GLD or the SLV in the case with JP Morgan's custodial vaults for these trusts. And, you know, I've never thought that GLD or SLV was anything more than a fractional bullion scheme. And, you know, I think it was Rob referenced Ronan Manley earlier. I mean, Ronan Manley, he did some great research and discovered that the GLD trust was leasing bars from the Bank of England. Now, the problem that SLV has with that is the central banks don't own silver anymore. So it wouldn't be able to lease the bars from the Bank of England. Now, I don't know, maybe JP Morgan really does have all the silver that Ted Butler says they have. And maybe they're leasing silver bars from JP Morgan, you know, and they don't have to move the bars. It's all in the same vault. So I would say that if a real bona fide independent audit was done tomorrow of the SLV trust, I would speculate that maybe at most 75% of the shares that have been issued are covered with physical silver. And I think that might be optimistic.
Yeah, I would say probably less. When I talked to Nick Beresheff, CEO of BMG Group Precious Metals Fund up in Canada, he read, not only did he read the prospectus, but he read the authorized participant documentation back when I think it was on Edgar. This is years ago. They're not available anymore for both GLD and SLV. And he says, given the cost structure and given the way that those were written, he believes most of the metal in the two funds are leased. They're not titled. And he and I spent several episodes on my channel going through the audits, and there's multiple issues with the audits, and I'll summarize and say this as a former auditor. There's no way well, there's two big issues. One, the custodians don't have right of audit over who's storing the metal, the depositories. And secondly, the depositories have no way of knowing who has first claim on that bar of gold or silver. It could be rehypothecated, and they don't audit where it's coming from. They just take it. They take it in and assume, you know, that it's their bar. But if it's leased, it's not their bar.
Chris, any thoughts?
So, I mean, like I was talking with you guys, I perused the prospectus of the SLV last week. It's just so full of holes. There's no way in hell they have. I mean, I'd be surprised if they had 25% of the silver to cover all the claims.
I was just being optimistic.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm sure if they need it, and someone, I think you need 50,000 shares, what it is, to get your silver, they can borrow it. I think it's part of this system. And, you know, it's like in the prospectus, it also says it doesn't have to be investment grade silver. It doesn't matter the quality. So, I mean, it doesn't specify really anything. It basically says we don't have to have, you know, crap. You can just invest in it. I mean, it's not that much. It's a joke. And, you know, I hate that people invest in this thinking it's some sort of proxy for silver. I mean, if you're going to do it in your brokerage account, go to PSLV.
Chris, I've been looking, is there an audit at all? Or is this, I got a link from someone today that I've not been able to go through yet. I've been looking on their site. Is there even an audit provided? You commented on the quality.
I don't think they have. I mean, I'm not 100% on this, but I don't think they never have to do a proper audit. And I don't know.
Bona fide independent audit.
Yeah,
no, they don't.
Yeah, independent.
And the custodians don't have the right to audit who's holding the metal, the depositories, first thing. And it's the same thing with the CME group. I mean, their whole auditing structure on the futures is screwed up too. But the audits are never published. So the audit, I'm a former auditor. When you publish an audit, you give an opinion as to whether the statements of management are legitimate or not. In other words, you found discrepancies, and either the statements materially reflect what management has said, or they don't. And without that audit report, even if you audit it, if you don't know the outcome of the audit, it's pointless. So when you have private audits, that are not supervised by the custodian, it means nothing. Even if they say they have an audit, it means literally nothing.
Yeah, and even if they did, the prospectus is so like vague on what they have to have or don't have to have. I don't think an independent audit would come to any sort of conclusion that looked unfavorably upon the holdings.
Well, for one thing, I mean, to the extent that GLD and SLV are using sub-custodians, the sub-custodians don't even have to let auditors in.
Mm-hmm.
So a question here, a couple possibilities. I mean, I pray, I hope that they're putting the metal in there because it's. I had a couple people get angry with me on feedback or emails where I'm saying things. Be careful about SLV. Hey, I don't own it. I'm going to be fine, but I'm just saying they're not even my. That's by before I said anything on the air. I talked with Rob about this nonstop. Several other people. So it wasn't just, hey, maybe I'm missing something, but here's Rob with an auditing background. Chris and Dave with a banking background have seen this stuff. And so either, I mean, maybe there's a possibility that the metal isn't in there, or given that no one seems to see how it's possible that that it could have been put in there, if they're working that order, that means that this demand is competing against the other demand while there's where Andy described the shortage. And I guess that ties back to what you mentioned before with the COMEX. I don't know. Is that like become inevitable at some point, or when? Because if these guys don't have the metal, or they're looking for it, I mean, where I don't understand where it's going to keep coming from. Does anybody
It's
have
a
any
Ponzi
thought
scheme?
on that? Huh?
Ponzi scheme. You'll find out. This is. I mean, I think it's all part of the same system. If the COMEX needs to deliver silver, they'll get it from SLV. I mean, that's how cynical I am at this point. So, I mean, that's just.
Well, I share your concerns. Again, I don't have any agenda other than I trying to share good information. So there you go on some thoughts about SLV. Again, these are people who are sharing their honest, genuine opinion. You need to make your own decisions for yourself. But if you did find this helpful, and there are people that are asking the same question about SLV, I made this specifically so you could share that and at least let them be aware of what some of the longtime experts who have studied silver as their passion for their lifetime are concerned about.